video calling.
This call is now being recorded.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, audience. Welcome to this IARF webcast. And the topic today is the joint doctrine for amphibious operations. As most strategic scholars and experts would be aware, the various branches of the armed forces often promulgate doctrines, and the most recent one has been the Joint Doctrine for Amphibious Operations, promulgated by the headquarters of Integrated Defense Services. And to discuss this today, we couldn't have two better panelists. We have Major General Ajay Chaturvedi, a veteran of the Indian Army from the Corps of Engineers. He's held various staff, command and instructional posts in the Army and Integrated Defense Services establishment. He's been the Chief of Staff in the Andaman Nicobar Islands, overseeing amphibious operations, which is most relevant to today's webinar. He's also been the Assistant Chief of Integrated Defense Staff of the DIA. He was the Additional Director General Personnel of the Army Headquarters. He's a prolific writer and has written on national security, disaster management and leadership, geopolitics and energy. He's currently Vice Chairman of a Lucknow-based think tank called Strive. And may I add, he's been a regular contributor to our IARS Strategic Yearbook series. Welcome, sir, and thank you very much for joining the webinar. Thank you. Our other speaker is equally an exceptional officer. He's Captain Sarabjit Singh Parmar, a helicopter pilot from the Indian Navy. He's had a distinguished career in apex strategic level officers, where as Director Strategy, he was part of the core team that published the unclassified India's Maritime Security Strategy entitled Ensuring Secure Seas in 2015. He has been the Executive Director and a Senior Fellow at the National Maritime Foundation, which you know is the official think tank of the Indian Navy. He is a prolific writer on maritime security and strategy at various national and international conferences. Welcome to you, Captain, sir.
Thank you, Rishi.
And thank you both again for joining this webinar. And I hope our viewers online are able to see it. And the first... Sir, sorry. So without further ado, sir, I'd go to the first question. And Captain Parmar, in fact, I'll address this first to you, because the India promulgated the second maritime doctrine in 2016. There is also the maritime security strategy. Given that these exist, is there really a need for a new amphibious doctrine? What is the point of writing a new for the unversed? What is the point? Yes. I am live. Sir, what is the point of writing? Captain Parmar, are you mute? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes. So if you want,
okay, sir, what is the point of a new doctrine? As I said, we already have a maritime doctrine and strategy. What is the point of a new maritime doctrine, sir?
So let's get back to the basis of what is a doctrine needed for. So a doctrine is basically a set of beliefs and concepts, theory, if you would like to put it that way, And a strategy tells you how to work out that theory out in practice with whatever wherewithal you have, connecting the ends and the means, broadly said so. So it's okay. Amphibious operations are perhaps the most complex operations, and World War II Operation Overlord, if you remember, was one of the most complex operations. And it is also the start point of jointry in the US, because a lot of lessons that were learned from the build up to the 1944 invasion of Normandy led to certain issues that came to the fore for jointness. So amphibious operations are actually truly a joint operation, and let me explain why. So the 2017 Joint Doctrine for the Indian Armed Forces, which came out, which was one of the first joint doctrine, gives a broad brush for how the armed forces look at issues, and it devotes a paragraph to amphibious operation. It states that these operations are conducted by all services in an integrated manner to enable the army to land ashore from a sea approach in order to project land power. So this is the broad brush given by the joint doctrine. But however, the absence of a joint doctrine of amphibious operations was felt because there was nothing addressing it specifically. And if you permit me to also tell you that the Indian Army Land Warfare Doctrine of 2018 placed amphibious capability as an imperative for force projection operations. But it says that this should be read in conjunction with the Joint Doctrine of Indian Armed Forces 2017. So the link there was established. The Indian Air Force Doctrine of 2022 does not mention the term amphibious operations, but it provides the support, and it mentions the support that it be provided, which is placed under the No War, No Peace Air Strategy chapter and the Wartime Air Strategy chapter. So you can see that there is no direct linkage, but there's a reference to it. Insofar as the Navy is concerned, in the doctrine which you mentioned talks about amphibious operations. The strategy also talks about the amphibious operations, but because it's a joint operations, the need for a joint doctrine for amphibious operation which binds everything together, which gives clarity to thought process. The previous doctrine was dated 2008. It's been upgraded now and issued, and now it's come out in its new avatar, and therefore it gives a semblance of understanding to all the three services as to what are the basic concepts, what are the ideals, what are the beliefs, what are the theories, and therefore there should now be, to my mind, a strategy on joint amphibious operations that puts all the tenets of the three services together based on what the Joint Doctrine for Indian Armed Forces has stated. So therefore, there is an imperative need for this doctrine.
Thank you, sir. General Chaturvedi, sir, you're an army officer with amphibious experience. Would you wish to add something, sir?
Oh, yes. Firstly, very little has been left for me to say after what Captain Parmar has said. However, we need to think in terms of geography of India. Indian geography is such that it has got about 1,200 islands whose security is to be ensured. Secondly, about 7,500 kilometers of this coastline. And Indian Ocean being what it is like a, you can say that it's a boxed ocean. In the west, you have Africa, say Malawi coast, upward up to say Bab al-Mandab. You coming, say all those islands where we have interest like Mauritius, Madagascar, Reunion, Seychelles, and all those things. Then you come to the east, that is Malacca Strait, Sunda, Lombok, and all that. The entire thing is before it goes to Pacific Ocean. And in north, of course, is the Asia mainland is there. Now, the importance of this is from the time immemorial because it is the route for trading. Almost 80% trading goes through this. So first is the safety and security of island is necessary. Second is that SLOCs need to be, say kind of protected. Now with these two, I mean, balance, we can talk, there are many other things, but in today's terminal, say sense, this kind of a maritime domain, which we have almost, say 22 million kilometers, 2.4 million kilometers of, say EEZ, say continental shelf almost 12 million nautical miles. So with all that thing, there's a lot of area to be saved and preserved. And that is where as he said very correctly, Captain Parmar, that's a complex operation. Complex operation in the sense that in case, if all thing goes well, then you have to project yourself in this ocean. However, far more important is if some inimical element, say a few years back, it was LTT, which was almost threatening to take over some of the islands in the Andaman and Nicobar Island, or in east, say towards west, this our own Lakshadweep, that 9-degree channel, it was prone to piracy. So with all that thing, you have to be well prepared. And now the vision of Indian Navy over a period of time has improved to that extent that is blue water Navy. So to my mind, with all this thing, amphibious capabilities have to be developed. And that is where the centrality of this new doctrine comes. And I think it is not a day too late. It is just, in fact, we should have had this doctrine a little earlier, to my mind. There may be still some issues. You know, even in 71 operation, that when you tried to block Chittagong port and all those things, you had options. And today, when US is trying to create a number of options in Indian Ocean where they have very few bases as a basis, they have got Bahrain, they have got Diego Garcia, and all those things. And Pakistan is offering them now Pasni, which China is making inroad into the whole thing. I think India has to come out with an amphibious doctrine which can thwart all ill designs of all these superpowers who will try to invade into it, Indian Ocean.
Fine. Thank you both, sir, for this. And you see, the next thing that the doctrine, the chapter titled India's Maritime Environment, talks about threats and vulnerability, some of which actually Sir just covered: physical occupation of island, terrorist strike. And then the question is, amphibious capability are needed for India's geostrategic location. How do these actually address threats faced? I think General Chaturvedi has already spoken on that. And General Chaturvedi, in his chapter for our IARF Strategic Air Book, the 2024 book, wrote on the importance of Lakshadweep and Andaman Nicobar Islands. So what is the significance of the aforementioned nature of possible threats? So Captain Parmar, you could take it first, since General Chaturvedi has already said something. Sir, you take it. You're muted, Captain Parmar, you're muted. You're not audible.
Oh, so sorry. So let's go back into history. India's first amphibious landings were actually carried out in October-November 1947, just after independence, when we landed troops on Junagadh beach, when Junagadh wanted to cede to Pakistan. So it's nothing new for us. We've been there. So you had this threat coming from within. And even during the Goa operations, there was talk of amphibious landings, but many reasons. One is we didn't have the numbers, right? And number two, we were under a time-bound operation because of the pressure building up from the west. Do remember, Goa was Portuguese territory. And then, of course, was the fact that a land-based approach was found a better option because of the dangers involved if you go in with a weak force for an amphibious landing. But we've come many miles forward. But let me go back to 1965. It's often said that the Navy has not taken part in the 1965 war, which is true. But where was the India fleet? It was deployed off the Andaman Nicobar Islands because Indonesia threatened to take over. So when you look at all this past history and see the present security environment we are in, we have uninhabited islands. We need to protect them. It's not that, anybody will come and benefit from it. But can you imagine, in a state of high tension, if somebody just comes and lands on one of the uninhabited islands, plants a fair flag, it proves that you have a very porous security line. Therefore, the presence which would be needed can only be given from the amphibious operations. So we have uninhabited islands. So apart from the fact that it is a traditional manner of operations, don't forget, during the tsunami 2004 and the other HADR operations we carry out, and that's the reason why also we went in for Jalashwa, was one of the reasons to strengthen our non-traditional capability of addressing this threat. And when you look at islands and you look at our littorals also, I think amphibious ships are the best option. And the larger the amphibious ship, one is your troop carrying capability increases, but also your ability to change them into HADR nerve centers as hospitals and operations also increases. So all this builds up into the fact that you are addressing the the number of threats, risks, and challenges by having an amphibious capability. One is for protecting your sovereignty, right up to living up to the moniker of being a preferred security partner. Do remember Maldives in 1989. Although we went in by air, the landing ships had already started moving, but the operation was called off because we had already taken the action that was required. And then, of course, so we live up to the preferred moniker of preferred security partner and first responder. So that is, I think, threats, risks, and challenges and opportunities that come by it. So that is the reason why the significance of a capable amphibious force.
Thank you, sir. And Gentle Chaturvedi, sir, do you want to add, because you've already spoken, you want to add anything, sir?
Yes. There's certain things, very small things, because a person of his, say, Captain Parmar's stature doesn't need any further elaboration, but only thing they support documents, say some facts. India is planning to go for IMEC. Now, this will need safety from western coast, like from Kandla, Mundra, Mumbai, up to Jebel Ali or Fujairah. Secondly, with Americans, that energy assets now coming up. I mean, it's a known fact that in Andaman, say Nicobar, off Nicobar, we have already hit the gas and all those things. Americans are desperately trying to find a foothold in, say, Bay of Bengal. China is trying to make inroads into Indian Ocean. That is very important part of it. And the changing equipment profile suggests that not only that they are trying to make, say, Gwadar and Jivni in Pakistan. In 2020, they had this pact with Iran where $400 billion would be spent in the next 25 years. They are eyeing Bandar just to stymie your presence in Chabahar. So therefore, it is important that then another very important aspect in Indian Ocean is the kind of resources it has. It is the only sea where it is said that fishes die because of the old age. So poaching is a very, very preferred option for any inimical force. Piracy is another, gun running, because 36 countries which are in the Indian Ocean, littoral, 36 countries, many of them very, very unstable. And because of that, there's a reason for it, this for Indian Navy, over a period of time. Now they want to make it 200 ships Navy by 2030. So which is a very, very important aspect. So therefore, we have to build this capability, and in all future operations, let us be very clear, it is application of comprehensive national power of ours which will count. Third, in this case, very important aspect is that amphibious operations, as Captain Parmar had said initially, it's a very complex operation. If you see Overlord, in 41, 42, they talked, but it didn't work. In 43, when they started having, say, favorable air situation and all those things, YouTube threat had also gone down. 43, they started in May 43, and only June 44, they could go for Normandy landings. So therefore, it's an operation so therefore it is better that we have a doctrine which is ready, for which we train, we create capabilities, we create ISR capability, and then only this logistic support system, and that will all work. So therefore, it is very, very essential that we take all these things into account to thought any kind of a threat to our, and this IMEC is going to be a very major issue in years to come. More about it a little later when we talk about it.
Sir, thank you very much. You see, the next question one can say is, the doctrine has named certain countries, in so many words, has named certain countries which it says are the major countries that are which the doctrine names certain countries as the major countries which are important. In this, it has named US, Japan, China, and Russia. Now, one thing is Japan is not a major military power. Why do you think Japan got named? And secondly, if you take it a step further, and I request actually Captain Parmar to come in on this, the fact that Russia is mentioned as a specific country. Of course, US and China are, let's say, the two major powers in Cold War 2.0. But why would Russia get mentioned specifically, and why Japan? So, either of you, General, would you like to take it first, sir?
I mean, as you wish, I can do it.
Okay,
All
sir.
yours,
see,
All
yeah.
yours, sir.
Acha. Then you see, your doubt is, let us consider one by one all four of them. Say America has got interest based on AUKUS, based on I2U2, all those things. The Indian Ocean is becoming essentially important for US for their trade. So that is one reason. They have got one major base in Diego Garcia. However, they have got a base in Bahrain where their fleet is there. They have certain other facilities also. There are a large number of them. One of the reasons why they wanted to go to Saint Marine Island in Bangladesh, just to so they had no presence in Bay of Bengal. So one is rising Indian, say, availability of assets, that is energy assets. Second is, to threaten Yunnan, you need to have some position in Bay of Bengal, so, touching the underbelly of China. BRI's presence in Bangladesh, Myanmar, is also threatening their interests. So that is US's interest. China, in any case, wants to go to, say, not only their interest is essentially trade related. So they started having Djibouti base. They had Hambantota. They have got a submarine base coming up in Cox's Bazar. They have got some kind of repair facilities in Chittagong, which they are making. Even in Colombo port, they have got the facility. Further you come down, so China is with all these facilities, and their equipment profile is that they are going for midget submarines. They have brought down their nuclear submarine base to Yunnan, which is towards the south of South China Sea. So with all these things, China is showing its clear intent that they are here to, say, kind of dominate Indian Ocean. They have said it also in so many words that Indian Ocean is not India's ocean. It is. So all these things. So therefore, China has got its own interest in Indian Ocean. Russia post Syria issue, after this, say, implosion of Soviet Union, yes, for some time they became inward looking, but when the Syria operation started, they started realizing the importance of Indian Ocean, presence in Indian Ocean. So that is one. And in any case, they also want the, say, finger in the pie of Indian Ocean in terms of resources. So therefore, Russian interest, as far as Japan is concerned, Japan's biggest interest is more of a East China Sea to start with. However, their economic, almost 70% of their assets pass through Malacca. So therefore, they, in last, say, 25 to 27, they are going to spend as much as $2.35 billion. They are making their submarines, cruisers, and long-range missiles and all those things they are building up. So Japan has got interest now. As far as India's and Russian interest, one more interest I forgot. Vladivostok Chennai Sea Link. In 21, India got this, which will save India about 16 days from Sakhalin, their energy assets. So just for their safety and all those things. So against that, so China is interested not only to say further their economic interests, but to dominate those sea lanes which are there in the Indian Ocean region. So these are the four, to my mind, are very important aspects which we need to take into account. Of course, Malacca is a dilemma. They tried to overcome it by having Gwadar, has not worked so far. They tried to work out Croft Isthmus, not worked out. So therefore, they are willy-nilly stuck to Malacca. And with Sabang, India having some kind of a support base in Sabang also in Indonesia. So therefore, China has got its own interest in Indian Ocean quite substantially. And the latest facility which are coming in Car Nicobar, they have started doing some kind of a sabotage within India. That environment clearance, that, all those things they are trying to do so that they can stymie this project. So therefore, China has its own interests. So these are the four, my senses.
And Captain Parmar, sir, would you like to add anything on this about these four countries and why particularly? Because doctrine makers you've been on the other side. So, sir, would you like to come in?
Sure, absolutely. So let me cover the US part first. Or let me put it this way, that I'm going to cover this under two main aspects. One is strategic presence, and the other is energy. So as far as the US is concerned, it's a question of strategic presence. Now, it's not known what is actually US interest in the Indian Ocean, because they never had an Indian Ocean strategy. So when you even go back 2 decades and look at the national security strategies and you analyze them, you realize that the Indian Ocean has always been left to India. And in the last national security strategy that came out during Biden's time, we're still waiting for the Trump administration to come out, very clearly said that in the Indian Ocean, they would assist India with capacities and capabilities to address Chinese presence. But the strategic presence is there because of Daegu Garcia. And do remember, Daegu Garcia is an important base for them and has been used effectively for all their operations which were carried out in Iraq and Afghanistan. And so therefore, that's a strategic presence for them. For them, it's keeping more or less the Indian Ocean region under some sort of surveillance, but the focus is going to be on the Persian Gulf, South China Sea, and beyond, which is their focal area. And if you look at their approach to the Indo-Pacific region, it is up to the western coast of India. So that is where the US presence, strategic presence works out. There are many other factors, but I'll just keep it short here. Where Russia is concerned, if you look at the 2022 Russian Maritime Doctrine, they did a reshuffling of their areas, and the number one priority went to the Arctic. Number two came to Asia. And as General Chaturvedi said, Syria has been a lesson for them. And when you read the Russian Maritime Doctrine, very clearly it says that we would like to enhance our relationship with countries like India, Syria, all those nations with perhaps we would not like our name to be pegged with, but that is the way Russia looks at it. And when you look back to the Cold War era and how the Russians or the Soviet Union looked at the Indian Ocean region, is the search for warm water ports. And I think the Ukraine, war with Ukraine has proved its point, and therefore the focus on this Indian Ocean region, though it was put down in 2022, the Russian Maritime Doctrine, I think it's got a little put on the back burner because of the progress of the war with Ukraine and Russia's inability to look beyond that area or focus, although there is the Chennai-Vladivostok thing. Also do remember that the Russians are reaching out to a lot of our neighbors. So when they came with their ships to exercise with India, they also made a port call to Bangladesh. They are now looking at sort of a defense. There was reports of them selling jet engines to Pakistan to power their Chinese-made fighters. So you can see this sort of interest in the Indian Ocean region, and that is also because we are also looking at diversifying from Russia, not only defense-wise, but there is talks perhaps on the oil imports from Russia. And then, of course, if you read these latest statements that have come out, I mean, it's still an area to be watched and see where we go. So the Russian interest in the Indian Ocean region is overall on the Asia Pacific, what they call the Asia Pacific. They don't call it the Indo-Pacific. Insofar as Japan is concerned, it's a question of energy. Their energy flow is dependent upon Strait of Hormuz and Malacca, unimpeded passage of energy for them. And then it comes through the South China Sea. There are East China Sea issues with China as far as Japan is concerned. So Japan's interest in the IOR stems mainly from the flow of energy and also its interactions with other countries in which it has an understanding. It. One example I can give you was the Africa-Asia Growth Corridor, which was supposed to be done with India, but of course it didn't go too much forward with India. And Japan is now again looking at engaging Africa for certain regions. So the only method of crossing over and engaging with Africa is to the Indian Ocean region. So again, that is a passageway and also looking at energy. Where China is concerned, now that's again the big dragon or the, in the room, it fills up the room. The Chinese and the Russians have carried out joint amphibious exercises. And then, of course, Japan gets alarmed because it's in the Kuril Islands. And therefore, when this did this sort of joint amphibious operations, it's an indication for what comes in the future. The Chinese have carried out amphibious landings on an uninhabited island, which is Malaysian territory. This was around, I think, 10, 12 years ago when MDA was not that good in the South China Sea and the Malaysians didn't get to know about it. So this is again an example of how I say that if somebody decides to land on an uninhabited island, Andaman Nicobar Island, plant a flag and sing patriotic songs and put it out in the open, it conveys a message for both, in both ways. So the interest in the Indian Ocean region is for multiple purposes, but these I think are the main, as I said, strategic presence and energy flows. Apart from these four nations, there are other nations that I think merit attention, but perhaps a revision of the doctrine whenever it happens and there is a change in the security environment, there will be an addition of intra-regional powers, which is also of equal importance. And India has got good relations with many of them.
So okay, you would really like to name these one or two countries? I mean,
absolutely. Australia, Indonesia, Singapore, South Korea, South Africa, So let me tempt you with a thought that if the Quad is going to be weak because of the Trump approach to the Quad in itself, and of course he's not coming for the meeting in India, which was planned for Quad leaders, then it's time for the middle powers to step up.
Okay.
And it's something which I'm trying to coin as the seven samurai. Is India, Australia, Japan, 3 from the Quad. To that, you add South Korea, Indonesia, Singapore, and South Africa. With that, you cover most of the Indo-Pacific with a varied degree of capacity and capability. And of course, there are many minilaterals that involve these countries linking either directly or indirectly, which could actually enhance security. But I think that is beyond the scope of this discussion today.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
And just let me add what he has said very rightly. Very beautiful, brilliant idea, Captain Parmar. One thing that, Quad's one of the major, objective of Quad is rule-based system. And this kind of a pressure group, once it is built, it will help. So China will not be able to go unimpeded, unchecked, doing whatever they wish to do. And for which the capabilities in India will have to be created quite substantially, especially in MDA, what you have mentioned.
Wonderful, sir. Captain Parmar, in fact, I'll just make a couple of points here, sir. One is what you talk about planting the flag on the Andaman Islands. Some people say that Subhash Bose at one point planted a flag on the Andaman Islands and claimed that's the first government of independent India. And what you say about the seven samurai, it seems to it said that Captain G.S. Khurana at some point first used the word Quad in his writings, and after that Shinzo Abe talked about the diamond of democracy or something. So for all you know, your seven samurai, it may well go into the strategic lexicon. One more of your various contributions, sir.
I would suggest you propagate the term and give me the IPR. Thank you, Rishi.
Indeed, sir. So the doctrine also talks about inland and coastal disputed water bodies. Now, are there any extra regional territories beyond the IOR, particularly in the context of IMEC? And you see, what our maritime doctrine talks about Strait of Hormuz to Strait of Malacca and Cape of Good Hope. Are there even bodies, extra territorial bodies beyond the IOR where the amphibious capability may get deployed?
You want me to take that on first?
Yes,
or
sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So first, let's look at what is the extent of the Indian Ocean region. So let me you sort of let me throw in a spanner in the works. Any nation who's got access to the Indian Ocean region under the definition that exists in international understandings, of there is that one thick document which covers what is under the Indian Ocean region. Israel actually qualifies to be an Indian Ocean region nation because it has access to the Red Sea through the port of Aqaba. Okay, so when you're looking at extra-regional territories beyond the IOR, then to my mind, you are looking beyond the Suez Canal, which is the Mediterranean. You are looking west of the Cape of Good Hope. And of course, that's about it, because as for India, the Indo-Pacific region touches the coast of America. So there's an interesting term which I heard recently, again, it was in Australia, the word Indo-Atlantic, which sort of encompasses the IOR and the western coast of Africa, which is part of our secondary area of maritime interest when we expanded it in the IMSS 2015 and the Mediterranean Sea. You know that because we have interest there, we have oil investments, we have strategic interests. So when you look at all this, I would not call them extra regional. One second.
Oh.
In the meantime, I'll just add what
Yes, sir.
he was mentioning. You know, this oil interest, when we talk of, OVL has got in about 15 countries, about 32 facilities. And many of them are in Africa, say offshore facilities. First let Parmar
Captain,
complete.
sorry. Captain.
I'm so sorry. I don't know how he got into the room. So what I'm saying is, when you look at I would not call them ex-regional territories. So when you look at the areas of maritime interest which we have indicated in the IMSS, we have primary, we have secondary, but we have also said that any areas beyond this does not mean they are not of interest. Any part of the world that impacts our national interest or national maritime interest will be of our core maritime interest. So I think we need to look at it in that manner. And I just brought in the new term Indo-Atlantic. It is a seductive term. It still has to be discussed. And how do we cope with that? So that's something I think that can come about. And I'll pause here.
I'll add to what he says. The recent standoff of INS Trikhand in Mediterranean is a live example of that kind of a thing, where your interest in, say, Greece, and when you think of IMEC, from Haifa going to Marseille to Trieste to Piraeus. So all these things make it very important. Cyprus becomes important in your scheme of things. So therefore, that Eastern Mediterranean, where friend Erdogan was trying to be a boss, can no longer remain so. So we'll have to, and that is why the vision of Indian Navy is enhancing every day, because wherever our national interests are there, we'll have to have capability to reach there, and capability to not only reach there, but to be effective there. And as I was mentioning, that your energy interests are very, very important. 32 facilities of OVL in 15 countries, including Iran, Iraq, Syria, say Malawi. All those things, they make India quite keen on, say, saving those interests. If you don't save these interests, somebody else will own them up. And now these facilities which are coming up in Bay of Bengal area and Andaman Sea, they are very, very important, and therefore you cannot ignore all these things. And therefore you will have to have capability, not only in terms of Navy alone, because as I said, that it is application of comprehensive national power. And where you say if there's an island territory, there is a facility which is being trying to be, say, kind of a through a coup or through some kind of a forced operation, somebody else is trying to occupy them, you should have capability to throw them out. So that is what is important, and that is where it becomes very, very important that we continue building our capability in this domain.
Fine, sir. Thank you.
Rishi,
The
can I
next-
just add one more
Please,
thing?
sir,
You know,
please, sir.
talked about IMEC. There is something called the Lobito Corridor. And this is something that the US and EU were looking at perhaps as an alternate to IMEC due to the instability in West Asia. And this ran across full Africa up to the Port of Lobito in Angola, where we have again interest because it's oil interest, and a lot of our oil flows out from the ports in and around that. And I always ask this question, that why wasn't, say, Japan or India included in this, sort of framework? So when you look at extra-regional territories, I think there is much more than just looking at, one area for crossing over like IMEC. There is Africa, but then the Lobito Corridor also goes right through Congo, and that's a very highly unstable area. And so there are a lot of issues like this that can be considered for interest. And of course, they all start on the coast and end on the coast. So we are back to the issue of perhaps amphibious capability.
Okay, thank you both, sir. And you see, amphibious, the doctrine says the amphibious operation needs to, one, it needs to provide deterrence. Secondly, breach a stalemate. Now, going into history, going into past ops by the Indian forces, which are instances where such situations may arise? Where to breach a stalemate or deterrence, that amphibious ops may be deployed, going into the past ops by the armed forces.
I think island territories are very, very live example of that kind of a thing, where this kind of a attempt can be made, and then to break that stalemate, you will have to do this kind of a thing only. And most important part is, I remember many years back, in Black Sea, Americans tried to make an entry through, and that time it was still Soviet Union. So they managed to escort them out. They didn't allow them to stay even for a day. So this kind of a deterrence capability will have to be created. And one example, as I said, that INS Trikhand, whatever available in the open domain I have come across, that people have started realizing that India is building that kind of a thing, that which is necessary for IMEC to be successful. Otherwise, Turkey was trying to extract their pound of flesh on this, that it is our domain and all those things, is our area of influence and all those things. But it's not working out. So therefore, we will have to create these capability where deterrence and stalemate breaking has to be go side by side.
Okay, Captain Parmar, or may I go on to the next question, sir?
You want me to? Okay. Past ops by Indian forces. I think, I think we need to have a relook at what is the deterrent value of an amphibious capability today. And I mean, I'm not saying that if we look at Saving Private Ryan, I think gone are the days where you'll hit the beach and the ramp will come down and you'll move out on a protected beach, because you'll take a lot of casualties. And the question is, how many beaches are we looking at? So when you look at World War II and you look at the number of amphibious landings that the US carried out in its island hopping strategy, it's tremendous. And each one was a case unto its own. But is that going to happen today is something we need to look at. So I'm not sure if it gives an increase in deterrent value, especially when you have something now called, standoff beaching, or what the US often also call as operational maneuver from the sea. Is that going to be a part and parcel of this, or is it going to be a separate operation out there? To breach a stalemate, yes, perhaps. Whether we are going to look at the traditional first role or the first type of an amphibious operation, which is an amphibious landing? Or are we going to look at an amphibious raid, which then forms part of a special forces operation given at our adversaries? And what is it that we are going to look at? So again, this is a doctrine, these are concepts. So you can't wish them away. So they will stay forever. So it's not that if it's not no longer important or it's redundant, you remove it. It's part of the lexicon. If you remove it from history, then of course you are bound to repeat it with perhaps double the cost. But I think we need to look at what are we looking with our amphibious capabilities? What are the options available to us and how are we going to play it out? And that comes out in the strategy part. The doctrine can remain as sound as it is. So whether it's a raid, whether it's a withdrawal, whether it's a demonstration or a landing, the traditional 4 types of amphibious roles we are looking at.
Fine, sir. Okay, the next thing that the doctrine says is amphibious operations have a role in defense cooperation, safeguarding the interests of the Indian diaspora, achieving national security objectives. So how do amphibious ops fit into defense diplomacy? I mean, sir, Major General, sir, do you want to take that? How do they
Yes,
fit into?
recent, the latest is 2023, I think 2023 it was, yes. Kaveri, from Sudan you brought people back. Just before that you brought people from Yemen, 2020. So the Indian diaspora is almost to the tune of 35 million people world over. And even this, a country like UAE alone has got about 17% of this strength. So therefore, all these areas, either Indian diaspora or Indian people of Indian origin, they're all along this Indian rim, Indian Ocean rim. People, say starting from west, you can say the Horn of Africa to say Middle East to going up to east is Myanmar and to Indonesia and all those things. So there are a lot of areas where Indian diaspora is there and they feel safe only in case if they know that in case of any problem, they can be evacuated. And we have proved in time and again from Kuwait, from Yemen, from Sudan, we brought our people back, and for which both Indian Air Force and Indian Navy were very extensively used. And so therefore, for defense diplomacy, when you say, there's only a part of it. Second part is during pandemic, the kind of support you provided to, say, countries of your friendly foreign countries. So that's the second part. A kind of a reassurance which you will be giving to some those Papua New Guinea. You think that Papua New Guinea chap, in case if he touched Prime Minister Modi's feet, it is because of for some respect or something? Because they know that India is a benign power, is a growing benign power. They are neither like China, who will extract the pound of flesh in terms of 6.5% of interest for whatever they do, or US, who will try to get the base or try to change the culture or something. So therefore, defense diplomacy is a very important part of any kind of amphibious operations. And therefore, the something called force in being. If all these littoral countries, they realize that yes, India is there to take care of their interests. Just imagine what Sri Lanka did or Maldives did. At one point of time, they were trying to go to China through Hambantota or even in that, what is that, Malacca, whatever that name of the port is there in Maldives. But they realized that it will not help, so they came back to India. And now, if they gave one portion of Colombo to be developed by China, they're going second portion to India and Japan. So those are the kind of things which are important. And therefore, defense diplomacy is furthered through this amphibious capability.
Okay, Captain Parmar, do you want to come in on this, sir?
I'll just add one more aspect, adding on to what General Chaturvedi has said. HADR and the pandemic situation, the manner in which we used our amphibious forces, I think, has proven the point time and over again. And apart from taking out our own citizens, and it's under the operations of non-combatant evacuation operations, we have proven time and again that it has been proven time again that India and its Navy or its armed forces are the only people who are generally welcome in unstable areas to take your people out. So we've not only taken our Indian citizens out, but we've also taken out citizens of other countries. And in Yemen in 2015, I do recall that other navies tried to go in, but they weren't permitted, and some of them were even fired at. But the Indian Navy was the only one that was permitted to go in. And even if you remember Lebanon, when I think it was 2005, when a 4-hour ceasefire window was provided by both sides, the Hezbollah and Israel, come in and take your people out. We took out citizens from other countries. Yemen, again, we were requested by other nations to take out citizens of their country, which we did. So that is a part of defense diplomacy, and it gets back to the fact that we live by the moniker of preferred security partner and first responder. So I think it fits very well into the glove of defense diplomacy, especially when the chips are down. But let me add one more thing here. So far, we have been fortunate that there has been a government in power in the unstable area that has said, yes, you come in. Let me complicate the situation. Imagine doing NEO during a pandemic. Imagine doing NEO during an earthquake, and there is no government available. We need to look at going with boots on ground, whether we do it alone or whether we do it in a cooperative mechanism with other forces. So therefore, that extends the ambit of defense diplomacy, especially when you look at operation of you're utilizing your amphibious forces for taking out your people as well as people of other nations. That's something we need to consider.
Thank you, sir.
In fact, Quad would be a very, very good forum to further this kind of a diplomacy. And HADR, I remember those 2 million exercises which I did when I was with the Andaman Nicobar Command. I found that most of the Southeast Asian countries, they were seized with this issue of not only tsunami, but any kind of problem areas. And that is where they were looking up to India for support. So therefore, this is a very much area, and that's why if you see this millions scope, has kept on increasing over the years. Initially, probably 6-7 countries. Now I think it's almost more than 25 countries participate alternate years into it, because this is part of our diplomatic outreach.
Thank you, sir. One example I'd give: recently in some evacuation, I think India even evacuated Pakistani citizens who were grateful to India for evacuating them.
No, even in Kaveri and that Yemen, both the places, and Ukraine, of course, they were holding tricolor to get into us. So therefore, it's very much part of it. And India, when it comes to this benign issues, they're always trusted. Nobody distrusts them.
So now to kind of come into what's in some ways, let's say, come into the maroon zone or purple zone, if you like. There is often talk about there need to be seamless integration between the 3 armed forces. And you see, in practical terms, what are the challenges in joint and integrated defense in executing maritime, executing amphibious operations? And I'll add this to Captain Parmar. Sir, the next question, both of you take this. The next question is actually to Captain Parmar.
You want me to look at the challenges, Rishi?
And also, please, since you've come in, you please discuss how to achieve a successful maritime and air situation. Since you're a maritime aviator, you are the best person to answer it, sir.
So actually both one will flow into the other. I think the biggest challenge is, understanding the doctrinal concepts of each service. And that is where the joint doctrine is the first step towards achieving that. And if we are able to understand the concepts and, more importantly, the thought process behind it and the flexibility to accept that there is a difference in opinion, but we need to looking for a convergent solution, is the first challenge that needs to be overcome. So therefore, You did mention the color purple. I would put it, or maroon, or whatever color you want to put all the three colors together. I think the challenge is in planning for joint operations rather than a joint planning, if you get the gist of what I'm trying to say. So first is understanding the concepts. More importantly, understanding the rationale behind that concept and accepting the fact that this is also a method of doing things. And from that, then you would be able to achieve, what we call a favorable air situation, which is required for amphibious operations, and also a modicum of sea control. And both have to come hand in glove. And this is where, the three services work together essentially. But towards the build-up phase, I would dare say it would be the the Navy and the Air Force who work together in tandem for a favorable air situation and maintain sea control, so that you have a sort of a unopposed seaward side landing. There will be opposition when you land on the coast, but that's part of the planning, and the devil comes in the detail. And let me go back to Operation Overlord. General Eisenhower was sent to England in 1942, if I remember my military history correctly, in the rank of brigadier, to convince Winston Churchill that we need to launch an amphibious assault on Europe. And it took 2 years. And at the end of it, in 44, Eisenhower was a general, and he was also overall commander. So it took that much time for the allies to come together, to work together. And if that is how two nations can come together, or a couple of nations, I don't think it's too difficult for three services of the same country to think together. But we need to get to that point.
Okay.
I'll share my experience, and then I'll substantiate this point. Till in CDM, when we were used to talk of this jointness and all those things, I, as a man in olives, was not convinced. My friends in whites were not convinced. My friends in light blue were not convinced, and we were just friendly chats we will just keep having. The moment I reached in DIA, that time it was IDS headquarters, it was part of IDS headquarters, we started understanding the nuances of it, that how it is going to help. Then later, once I was in Andaman, then the three, that Air Force component, Naval component, Army Brigade, when they started working together, we realized the, importance and criticality of such a thing. When you start doing these kind of a thing, if you notice, even that post Galwan, it's not only, it's not so much jointness was not there during Kargil operation, although all three services did their respective operations. Navy did Talwar, they did Safed Sagar, and we did Operation Vijay. But once it came to post Galwan, I think a very, very integrated approach was there inside. P-81 were used for ISR. Drones were used. And Sindoor, of course, has cemented that position. So I think the realization in services is coming. And more than, I think the only way to further it, that you have more joint commands of this kind, like Andaman type, where you realize that how important it is for all three services to work together. Presently, it is only in a strategic command or this thing. But imagine the resources we have not talked of. Space, it's a common resource. Cyber, common resource. Special forces, common resource. So therefore, and all these are going to play a very, very important role in all future operations. So therefore, when there's so many common operations, now just look at the logistics. Now, EME has got one CAT part, Navy logistics has got another CAT part, Air Force, and the same thing. Who is cheating you? The trade. So therefore, if all these things slowly and gradually are combined, intelligence, logistic support system, and others, probably it will keep on becoming better and better. Response, effectiveness of response would become that much better. That is what my point is.
Sir,
it will take time. It will take time. There is no doubt on that. because sadly, till yesterday they were on it. Indian Navy and Army had already come to this conclusion that it's Air Force who are coming to terms. But suddenly post Sindoor, when everyone started saying that it is the Air Force which has managed to do, and sorry, it is not. The fear of Pakistan about Karachi with Navy sitting in Arabian Sea was quite relevant. The kind of pounding which Indian Army did along Punch and all those things, saw to it that the army is totally stuck there. So therefore, it has to be a combined operation, and credit has to be to all three services, and then only it will keep on becoming. IDES should keep becoming better, and it will take time. But last point on this issue, every country which has gone for jointness, it has to by an act of parliament in democracies. No, I'm not talking of say autocracies or dictatorship where bossman wants is accepted. Even America had to go for Nicholas Goldwater reform. I mean, it was an act. It was through an act of parliament. It was only. So therefore, it will have to be done, and more cross postings that will help. Cross postings of Navy coming to Army and Army going to Navy. Navy. I mean, say I realized, and it became purple only after I served in Andaman. Before that, I was doing my job as a professional, but I mean, let me be very candid with you, I was not very convinced.
Fine,
Like your
sir.
jersey is of the tricolor, sir. If I may.
Sorry?
The color of the jersey you're wearing is the joint color.
Yes. Very, very purposefully, I wore this.
Fine, sir. Okay. Sort of, I think maybe we've gone on for an hour. Okay, one thing, in fact, I'll start with Captain Parmar. Sir, ISR seems to, the doctrine makes ISR a tri-service responsibility. Given that it's long been a maritime activity, how is it to be integrated? How do other services view the function? Captain Parmar, to your question, sir.
Yeah, I'll keep it short and sweet. So I'm not sure whether it's only a maritime activity. I mean, the terms may be used differently as far as the Air Force and Army goes, and there is a reason for that. But if you are looking at joint intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, then we do have the assets. General Chaturvedi has mentioned that P8Is have been used on land earlier. Even during Kargil, I believe the EW Squadron of the Navy was used for, mapping the radiations that came out from the various radar sites of Pakistan, similarly along the coast. So I don't think it's only a maritime activity, but we need to combine our assets, especially nowadays when you have unmanned assets. So the UAVs, and I think Sindoor is a perfect example of how drones can be used effectively. So why not go in for, say a joint force and look at ISR, whether you want to do it in the mountains, whether you want to do it on the plains, whether you want to do it on the sea. The assets generally are the same. Space has been mentioned. It's a common area, and we need to get that going. So therefore, there needs to be an integration of inputs of intelligence sharing. We've come a long way. We definitely have come a long way, but there are still miles to go. And the idea is for quick fashion or a quick method of exchanging intelligence inputs, either raw or processed, and then the reverse process once you have got your inputs from the respective areas. You never know which form of input or intelligence will add value to your own assessment. And I think that needs to be looked at.
Sir, General Chaturvedi, sir, if you want to.
Yeah, since I had a exposure to DIA, let me put it in, I mean, although my exposure now dates back to almost more than a decade, for a decade and a half back, I was there, say 2007. So almost 20 years, now 2 decades. So my sense is that ISR is first thing which should be, along with logistics, should be combined. Because intelligence is a processing of all the inputs available. Unless you have a kind of a joint team, not knowing who will be benefited most, and then only you will be able to come out with the best response tool. So therefore, it is essential that we must have a joint system of intelligence, and DIA is a step in that direction. But strengthening and kind of empowering it more in terms of equipment, in terms of say cognitive ability, and say knowledge base building, data management will help quite substantially. And this will not only, ISR will not only help in the sense that the intelligence for actionable intelligence and only electronic warfare would be substantially be devolving on this knowledge. And future wars, drones, let us be very, very honest, play a very important role. Radar systems, because the moment we neutralized the radar systems of Pakistan, it became a blind country, and then we could do what we did in Sindoor. So therefore, it has to be a new kind of a thought process. And it cannot be used as that everyone is using drone, somebody is using for something. It has to be in a coordinated manner. The entire thing will have to be built up.
Fine, sir. Let's wind up. I'd say, Captain Parmar, I'll come to you first, and then let General Chaturvedi have the last word. What are your closing remarks, Captain Parmar? Over to you, sir, first.
So I think if we need to enforce the joint doctrine on amphibious warfare, there is a need for a joint amphibious warfare strategy, or to lay down the manner in which we will be using our assets and what are the various situations, whether it's traditional or non-traditional. I think that needs to be made. It's not necessary that that would be out in the open domain. It could be a classified document. I'm not sure if work is on. If it is on, it's a good step. But we need a strategy to back up the doctrine, so that whenever we relook the doctrine, or we get new assets and technology comes in, the strategy gets refined. I think that would be the proof in the pudding for the joint doctrine, and put it in its right perspective.
Thank you, General Chaturvedi, sir. If you'd like to have the last word.
Yes. One or two just things I'll add. Government of India has already given a very, very clear-cut direction. Sagar. Sagar is the security and growth of all in the region. If that is the case, we will have to build up our entire strategy on that. So first is the doctrine of amphibious operations, but it has to be more wider than this. And as Captain Parmar very rightly said, that initially it could be in a classified domain. But there, the most important part is that our assets, both physical assets in terms of say island territories, and our economic assets like energy assets, will have to be factored into safe protecting and safeguarding. Then domination of these SLOCs in the sense that nobody plays around with them. And Indian Ocean is, we need to have a capability where we provide the safety and security of this SLOCs. We need to continue caring for Indian diaspora. We need to keep caring for say situations like pandemic or HADR issues, for which we will have to be prepared. So therefore, this is the first step, and in the right direction. I think a miles to go before we reach to conclusion.
Thank you very much, sir, to both the panelists for an exceptional webinar, and thank you for taking the questions and answering them. And I'm sure the viewers who are viewing it on YouTube, and this video will be edited and go on YouTube. So this will be a very useful addition to knowledge on this topic of amphibious operations and integrated defense and all the other questions that have been raised. It's just that in the chat box, we have some questions. I'll take the one question is, will amphibious forces be used at sea, such as piracy or capture a large enemy ship with armed people? Why can't the Navy not tackle the problem at sea? Is this anti-piracy, is that a Navy job or an amphibious force job? That seems to be the question.
Neither.
So it's not an amphibious role, first of all. All right, let's be very clear about it. It's more of a strong policing role. And if you remember, when initially, we were sending in destroyers and frigates to tackle pirates in what I call piracy 1.0 in 2008 when we sent it. But then, of course, then we started sending, offshore patrol vessels with armed helicopters, because that was the right combination that you actually needed. Because a destroyer or a frigate was an overkill, whereas an offshore patrol vessel, due to its endurance and its ability to tackle that threat, was the right mixture out there. So why can't we tackle? Well, let me give you an example. So General Buster House, who was Op Atlanta commander way back in 2008, 2009, a Royal Marine officer he headed the EU force. Now, in one of the depositions before the Foreign Affairs Committee of the House of Lords, when he was asked about the number of assets he needed for the area of his responsibility, he says, well, if you want a 30-minute-ish response time, then I need 83 frigate-sized ships, each with an armed helicopter. That is the quantum. And there is no navy in the world who can alone provide that. And therefore, we were stretched. And therefore, then we came down to offshore patrol vessels, as I've said. So it's nothing to do with amphibious. It's more to do to tackle the pirates with the right means you have, and no overkill.
Thank you. There don't seem to be any more questions, and Group Captain Mehta is logged on. So, sir, would you like to come in and say anything? Would you like to add anything, sir, Group Captain?
First of all, good evening, Chaturvedi sir and Captain Parmar. We met before that. Sorry, I could not participate in this discussion because I wanted to give time to the guest speaker, and I was just supporting Mr. Rishi from behind, giving this technical support, because this is the first time we are still experimenting with our online this streaming, which we have not been doing very often, but we want to have that. So that is what I was experimenting behind the scene. But I must thank both our guest speaker and panelists. Excellent insights, and very few people know about this amphibious doctrine. And when Rishi mentioned it to me for the first time, because I am not very well versed in it, that such a doctrine exists, I say, so what? It's a very small thing. What can we discuss there? No, sir, it is a doctrine and there is a lot of implication. Then we said, okay, go ahead. And after listening to your talks, viewers like me, who are not very much educated on this subject, got a lot of understanding of what it is all about. And with India's commercial and geopolitical footprint and interest, going to Middle East, even Mediterranean Sea, IMAC, this corridor, economic corridor, is basically about India. It connects India to Europe through IMAC, and IMAC is a huge, after this Gaza thing now subdued, and Trump is clamping on them in the driver's seat. I think Middle East is going to stabilize, and Abraham Accord, which was the starting point for all this problem, and AMAC will see the light of the day. This is my hunch. And similarly, if we see on the Chahaba side, also we might have a lot of land interest security situation in this Indian, Iran, Chabar, what do you call it? Central Asia. Yes, sir. So that is also a very important commercial interest and even security interest for us. If our cargoes are being disrupted very regularly, we may have to intervene on something like that. So I visualize all these things. Of course, the General Chaturvedi said overseas island that we own, now we are creating so many bases also. And so these are as we progress as a nation, and we are taking our rightful place among the big nations of the world, and being a responsible nation, we are going to play our role, benign, of course, and credible amphibious capability. I think is very, very important subject. And thank you, Rishi.
Question has just come. Somebody, the question in the chat box. Is it possible to establish an amphibious core similar to the mountain core? And I'll put that to General Chaturvedi first.
You see, there can't be a core for this kind of a thing. It has to be a coordinated effort for which, all three services would be needed. So you already have an Andaman and Nicobar command. So similar joint command would be with the area specific, say kind of a look will be needed. So I don't think there is any need to create a core or something of this kind, because command is already there, and this kind of a thing will be a very high level. After all, what when Captain Parmar mentioned about Overlord, initially they wanted to go for 3 divisions. Finally, do you know how many divisions reached there? 23 divisions. So it is not that amphibious operations are not small operations, and they need a lot of planning, and therefore instead of core, probably some more joint command would be created, and that will create a better say command and control structure to undertake such operations.
Okay, so I think now we can finally, it's been 1 hour and 20 minutes that our webinar is being webcast. So once again, thank you to all the speakers, to both the panelists for coming and taking the questions. And we hope that we are able to do many more such events on the IARF platform, webcasts, and even webinars. And I don't know how successful our live YouTube transmission has been, but we'll be editing this video and it will go on YouTube. So be rest assured, sir. Thank you very much. And your views will be, in fact, our objective is also this reaches a global audience, because there's tremendous scholarship in India on strategic affairs, but really strategic communication seems to be seems to really be the gap. So with those words, thank you, and I now stop recording. And thank you again very much, and Group Captain Mehta and the technical team at IRF. Sir, thank you for making this event possible, and thank you.